I often think about what was world before AI, right? Could we ever go back to that? The kind of stuff that you can get done, especially as someone who's running a small, lean company, the kind of stuff you can do with AI and be a bit frugal. I think that is immense. But I also see that this whole token maxing narrative, it's definitely being promoted by the LLM providers, the GPU providers, because it's in their interest, right? Like Jensen Huang keeps talking about that. Obviously, it's good for him. The more tokens he uses, the more his business grows. So I don't know. I think there's a little bit of that.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Welcome to AI for Advisors with Mark Heinen and James Cantwell. Every week, Mark and James break down the latest in the world of wealth tech and AI, and occasionally bring in guests to spice things up. This is not investment advice and not professionally produced. I am not real and not yet sentient. Now let's get on with the show.
Welcome to AI for Advisors with myself, Mark Heinen, and James Cantwell. James, how you doing?
Wonderful as always. Just living the dream, as one of my clients loves to say, and I adopted on the last episode. So
that's awesome. And how many products have you launched in the last week?
Well, so I love that you always ask this. The reality is I did launch a product this week. So I'm gonna use this opportunity. Shameless plug. Not a wealth management product, at least not specifically, but we launched Groundskeeper PM. It doesn't come out of Wealth Tech Select.
Too. It's completely landscapers need AI too.
That's exactly it. So we have Groundskeeper, our AI project management platform, client portal, project management tool, and the whole thing is managed by our AI agent, Willie. So you don't enter tasks, you don't update tasks.
Great Simpsons.
It does all the work for you. You just make the call on the project, review the plan that it proposes, have some conversation with it if you need to. With her. It's Willie. So you have some conversations with Willie, and then you approve a plan or make some edits, and it really saves a ton of time. We built it for our own company to use with our professional services business, and we've been using it for a few months and decided to launch it officially. So it went live on Monday, and we got a few different firms in early access testing it, and we're hoping to go full production probably in July.
So if people want to try this, how do they reach out to you, or can they
groundskeeperpm.com? They can go register for early access and learn more about the platform.
Okay.
So now we know. I love that we just turned this into this episode brought to you by Groundskeeper PM.
I know.
Can I ask a question? Why .com and not .ai?
Because I didn't want to spend $1,000 on a domain name, and .ai. I've said my piece on this, and honestly, I got to look at your websites to see if either of them use .ai. Yours does.
I do.
Hands up. For like
you both do.
2 years.
I'm gonna insult you. I'm gonna insult you both.
So lay it on us, James. Lay it on us.
I don't think .ai makes any sense as a long-term domain name.
I couldn't get the one I wanted on a .com, so it was .io. Which really, do people still use that? I mean,
we still see some of that
to me, but it doesn't make sense to everybody.
I mean, like, you just want a domain name that people remember. That's all that matters.
Do you remember when you had to have a domain name so that people would actually like go to your website because they were looking for that product? Like the competition that was behind all that back in the day?
Yeah. You don't really have to now.
It's like an AOL keyword. I mean, I think these days you just need SEO and people need to find you. It needs to be somewhat unique. I think people don't even remember domains for the most part. It's like a little bit of a branding thing, I would say. Yeah, that's really fascinating.
We should probably introduce our guest.
It might be. I mean, I was going to leave that to the last 5 minutes of the show, but we could probably do it now. So
their names are on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, so the voices you're hearing here are our esteemed guests who have blessed us with their presence. So Vineet Mohan came from HSBC, moved to Miami to talk to wealth advisors on beaches, and is now building FastTrackr AI, which is an end-to-end AI stack that is now currently focused on AI transition, advisor transition. So succession and AI advisor transition. So a very specific use case that, we're basically building a product around. And then we also have Frantz Widmaier, who inherited a 45-year-old institution, Build Good Marketing, and is modernizing it for the AI era while also building Altitude CRM, which is an AI-native platform combining CRM, marketing automation, and practice management. So really excited for this one because we sort of have two ends of the spectrum, really. So every advisor has a two-sided problem. They have to find clients and they have to serve them. And then I guess there's a third side, which is they have to transition, at the end to other people. So bringing all that together. And also, I will say there's another element of this, which I'm excited about, which we talk a little bit in the prep about, which is you guys are really running fairly lean organizations and moving very fast, which is very different from, I would argue, sort of a Series B plus funded AI organization, right? And so I think that's another interesting element we can talk about here. But yeah, why don't we start, Vineet, with you, partially because it's like 2 a.m. in India where you are, and so I want to be respectful of your time. Yeah, tell us more about, we love origin stories on this podcast, so I would love to hear more about your origin story, how you came across the original FastTrackr idea, different pivots, and what the process was like building up the company.
No, sounds good. Mark, James, Frantz. Yeah, good to kind of be on the show today. I've tuned into some of the prior episodes. Always loved the look and feel. So I think so far it's definitely lived up to its billing. So good to be on the show today.
We try and set low standards. This way we can constantly exceed them.
Keep it casual. Yeah, origin story. So I'm from India. Grew up here. Grew up in different parts of it. I feel like I've always been a bit of a forever nomad, moving from one place to another. So did all my education in India, and then got into the banking world after doing an MBA. So I was with HSBC Bank for almost 14 years. Lived in different parts of the world with working, with the bank, US, Hong Kong. Did a bunch of interesting roles. I was actually part of a global leadership program, which meant that every 2-3 years you take on a different role in a different part of the bank, in a different part of the world, which meant that I started in Leeds, then went to London, then Hong Kong, then New York, then San Francisco, and then finally finished up in Edinburgh in Scotland.
That sounds like a very cool program.
I mean, Leeds is the highlight there. Leeds is the one that
I know.
jumps out.
I'm glad. See, I started in Leeds, so then everything was uphill after that, right? So, but no, I did a bunch of interesting roles there and ran HSBC's client onboarding and implementation function for the payments business, the 20 plus markets. Ran fintech and tech sales and partnerships out of the West Coast in the US. So yeah, very interesting time. But I think always enjoyed roles where I had to stand something up. I think that was the common thread. So there was always this itch in my head of wanting to build. And once I left the bank, found partners in crime who were looking to do the same. And obviously, any industry that has its conferences on the beaches of Miami was a big pull.
It's a good reason to join wealth management.
Exactly. In fact, that was the first conference I attended. So I was like, okay, this one ticks the box. Let me just spend time here. But wealth management, I was obviously looking at it from the operational side rather than the advice side, just given my experience. And yeah, I think it's a lot of the macro trends look very interesting. And I won't repeat them here. We all know that. We started building FastTrackr around this time last year. I started with some of the kind of original use cases around surface level. I think, Mark, I've clearly done my homework around some of the gateway drugs, right? The meeting assistant and document extraction and so on and so forth. But interestingly, as I kind of talked to a lot more people, because I was on the hunt for that kind of hairy, complex problem statement, which could be an interesting wedge. And that's when I came upon transitions. And simply put, I mean, everyone talks about 15, 20,000 advisors moving from one firm to another because they're breaking away from the large wirehouses or BDs. There's a whole load of M&A activity that happens every year, 400, 500 deals. But the talk is always about those numbers and the deals, but rarely about the mechanics of what happens after the deal and the paperwork is signed. And talking to a lot of people, I realized that when advisors move, process of moving their client books with them is extremely painful and also extremely high value because nobody wants to lose their clients, right? Because that's the reason why they were attractive in the first place. And the way that whole process happened was still very much old school. Nothing had changed in the last 10, 15 years. So we looked hard at that problem statement.
Vineet, am I correct in understanding that most transitions, even today, typically take up to 90 days?
Yeah, or even more actually.
And then they're also losing a good portion of in a lot of transitions, some of the assets are leaking out the door. They're not actually making it. Going with
that's
the
right.
advisor to the new home.
Exactly. So that's absolutely right. In fact, I think industry reports put that number at around 10-20%, depending on where you're moving from and where you're going. Some of that obviously is because of how long it takes and the experience not being great. No client that has been with an advisor over 10-15 years wants to be sent a blank intake form saying, hey, give me these 100 data points so I can continue working with you, right? No client likes that. So I think that is part of the reason. But I'm sure some of the attrition is also because there's inertia, right? You like where you are. You don't want to do that. But you're absolutely right. Those are some of the major problems.
They don't own the relationship, so they're not willing to do the paperwork.
Correct.
Yeah. Right. It's a you problem, not a me problem, right? It's like you're deciding to change. I'm not changing anything. I could see that really being a challenge. And I mean, is this primarily driven by acquisitions, or is this driven by retirement, or both? Like, where do you see the need really primarily coming from?
So there's three, actually. If you look at that funnel, right, there are three pipes that feed into it. So one is the demographics, right? The median age of an advisor is 55, 56. So a lot of advisors are looking to exit in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So they're trying to find a new home. So they're always looking to move. On the other hand, the last 10 years, I think because of so much PE-driven activity, there's a lot of aggregators, larger firms looking to bring in or buy up some of these smaller advisor teams. And then the third pipe is really folks who want to break away, right? You've been at a wirehouse or a large firm for a very long time, and you want to have your own independent practice because you have, you've got these relationships that you've built with clients over the years. Now you want to just manage those relationships yourself. So you either become independent on your own or you join an RIA. So those are the three primary reasons, I would say, Mark. But even within those moves, how the move happens and how it works, there are nuances and differences there.
And what is the big unlock AI provides here?
So I think the big unlock really is, when people move, the hardest problem is how do you kind of get that data all over again? And when you're moving hundreds of households, if you resign from a firm, the amount of data you can carry with you or remember is limited. So obviously option A is you send a blank intake form, you can have a dynamic form, a nice looking form, etc. Option B is, can you use AI to leverage some of the existing sources of information to kind of go back to the client only as a backstop? And that's one thing. Secondly, I think that whole end-to-end flow, right? Because once the data comes in, completing all of that paperwork automatically. And that again changes depending on the destination firm, the destination custodians, of which there are many. So it's like one of those deep operational problems where it's not like an AI plug and play, but there's AI all along the way, every step of the journey. And then there's that other huge piece when you're moving so many households, the project management aspect is really not taken care of because data just lives in hundreds of spreadsheets today and no one knows which household is where in the journey. And there again, I think technology can play a big role in helping people progress things faster, be more proactive, and so on. So,
I mean, I think this is a point where I'm going to give a little plug for FastTrackr specifically in kind of how you're tackling this. I've seen other tools talk about and other platforms talk about handling advisor transitions. And obviously there's also a large number of services firms that will manage it for you. So, so they can help take care of it, but the dirty work still has to happen. And it still takes a long time. But what I love about what you guys are doing with FastTrackr is that it's not just like the pipes, it's not just the data aggregation, it's helping manage the whole process, right? Giving transparency to where it is in the pipeline, helping you move it through significantly faster, help you mitigate that asset leak out the door. I think those are that's the ultimate benefit, is that it makes it easier for everybody involved. And there's a few other technology platforms out there, and they really just focus on where the pipes will help connect the data, will help get it to the custodian, will help do that. But there's still that whole human element that has to sit on top of it and leverage those pipes. So it's partial solution, not a complete solution. And so you're pretty much the first firm, if not the first firm that I've seen try and tackle the entire problem end to end.
I was gonna say, because on the consulting side of things, Bill had actually pioneered what we used to call a firm change. And it was nothing we ever broadly promoted. It was usually when an advisor is changing firms, they don't, it's not like they tell everybody, right?
Yeah.
And it was funny because when he was doing it, like literally had to, like advisors weren't even using DocuSign back then, right? So it was like he had to come up with all the processes to put together with the sequences of what to actually do, wrapped up with the content that, because it's an important letter you're sending out to all your clients, right? And then would have to hound the team to do all the actual paperwork and stuff like that. So it's really neat to see that you're creating a solution that helps people not have to, to reduce the burden of that, because we still do some of that now. It's not the same thing. It's like, if advisors changing firms, then if they're working with us on the consulting side, we'll direct them on what they should do to do it successfully. And I think our most successful firm change was like he left and arrived with 105% of the assets he left with, which is a
Pick some
funny.
along the way.
Yeah. But no, it's neat. I mean, I think that what we're doing in technology, enabling people to not have to do the grueling things that gives them physical pain, is
Right.
like one of the major benefits out of what we're producing in this industry. So it's cool.
No,
That's a
thank
great
you. And I
sort of
think there's a,
baseline.
yeah.
Just avoid physical
Yeah.
pain through technology.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think this is one of those things where I'd be lying if I said, hey, the AI is plug and play. It'll do the entire transition for you. No, it won't. But it'll take away a lot of, I think one of the best, feedback I received after recent transition was guys saying that, I didn't have to work my weekends, which is unheard of when people transition. So those are the small kind of wins that you take.
That
Yeah, and
probably
I
felt
think-
like a
I know-
big win for him.
Yeah, that's huge. I do think this is like a fairly big opportunity, maybe even a big opportunity in other industries as well. I remember I was in sort of one of these VC pitch fests a couple of years ago, and someone was pitching a AI. You're familiar with AI twins. This was an AI ghost. So after someone leaves a company, it basically creates an AI ghost of that person. So you can just continue talking to them, and it has all the context, all the emails that the person had previously. I guess it's only for internal teams.
That could
for
get
companies.
weird really quick.
Wait, is
But
that
yeah.
like the bot that like Guilfoyle created that was talking to I forget the other character's name on Silicon Valley?
Richard, right? The CEO. Yeah. And like he would like be chatting with Richard with
Yeah.
the other guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. And then
can't
he had his what was his AI thing called? I know we've referenced it on the show before. Anton, son of Anton.
Anton, yeah. Son of Anton.
So he had son of Anton create like a clone of himself. And he was talking the whole time. So that's the ghost concept. That's basically it.
I mean, it's probably not that far off. I mean, the idea is like if someone leaves, you can still ask them questions, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
But that gives me an idea, Mark. So I should probably build an AI ghost version and help the firm which lost the advisor.
I mean,
so that way I'm helping both parties.
Right? I can't say I've thought through all the corner cases here, right? Like there might be some weird corner cases. You have to watch the full season of Silicon Valley to figure out all the corner cases.
I know. That was a kick.
They were so ahead of their time. I can't go a week without referencing that show.
Man, it would be so good if it came back. It would be such a good show if they did another season.
It would. I'd almost like to see it. I mean, the original cast was fantastic, but like, sometimes that sort of comeback doesn't work. So I'd almost like to see like a new reincarnation today with like a new cast. But Frantz, let's talk a little bit about Altitude CRM, the origin story of you as well, and how that spun out of Bill Good Marketing.
Yeah, sure. So I started my career in sales, didn't understand why marketing wasn't working. So then I moved into marketing. And then I didn't understand why products didn't work right. So then I moved into product. And then from there, I was like, oh, like products are actually everything, right? So sales, marketing, and actual creation of different things. And then that's the long story being short. So it was, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago, living in Los Angeles, my wife and I had our second kid. We're thinking about a third kid. And unfortunately, there's a law in the city where if you have more than 2 kids, then you have to leave. And so we decided to leave. And we were looking at where we should go. So we're looking at states that have like, no income tax or no sales tax. And I'd actually worked for Bill Good Marketing as the CMO for a few years. And Bill and I, in terms of like the family relationship, are great. But in business, like we're conflicting constantly. The man's brilliant and he's been just a titan in the industry for a long time. And it was like, I'm also very headstrong and have my own ideas on things. And so I went off and did some other things for a while. And I was constantly like, my wife worked for Bill at that time. And I would like, be working on something and overhear her come up with something. And I'd just like answer off. This kept on happening for like months and months and months. And she's like, can you just talk to my dad? And I was like, okay, fine. I'll talk with him. And instead of moving to Austin or Florida or whatever, we're like, Utah has a ton of kids and the houses are cheap and it's really cool. And Bill and I just basically worked out like, okay, I'll come and we'll work together and I'll learn the business from you. And I did that for 3 or 4 years and then took over the business. But at that time, it's we were talking about this before, but it's absolutely impossible to run a service and software company at the same time. It's just, if you want to do something really hard that will beat you down consistently, try doing that.
Well,
So
let's talk about why. Let's dig into this a little bit because I think there are a lot of people listening to this who are probably doing a little bit of both, including advisors who are starting their own software companies, right?
Yes, I mean, that's the right way to do it, right? If you're trying to do in parallel, or you're trying to run you can start a software company and attach on services, right? But back when this was being done, in order to have a software company as well as a services company, the amount of revenue you have to generate is exceptionally high. Services where you have professional services, especially people that are learning like a codified method of consulting, requires certain types of people, requires tremendous amounts of training. And then you try to add on the fact of learning wealth management, like this industry, its terminology, the nuances of it, the different types of advisors, where they're at in their professional journey, what should they be doing at what point in time, what systems work, it's literally, it's an impossibility. That's why you see in our industry, you have consulting companies, you have software companies, you have content companies, right? You don't have one that's doing all of it. And you can look at like the big guys in our industry in terms of like CRM. You have Red Swan Wealthbox. Do they do consulting? Do they do content? Did they do any of those auxiliary services? They don't. That's more on the software side. But for us, it was mainly like a business economics decision. We would train really, like, our consultants are good, but we would train them and then they would go like, I'm really amazing at this. Let me go do something else, right? So then you just invested 3, 4, 5 years in a person that is then generating revenue that takes you another 2 to 3 years to bring up to speed. And sometimes they don't work out in the beginning, and it's like and then it's unfair to the client because you're replacing their relationship with someone they've built trust with and stuff like that. So, and then it just doesn't work, especially for a small business. Like, we have 35 employees. We're not a huge company. So now though, you can do that, and it's twofold. It's easier to build software, especially if you have a good idea. For us, we already have a client base. So building an agentic system that replicates what we do with our clients that then also reduces additional friction points for them was like it was a no-brainer for us. So we've always had a CRM. Back when Bill was running the company, early 2000s, we had something called Gorilla 4. It was built in VB5. It had an Access database. We used to ship CDs to people. That's how old that software is. We just had to end of life it because we still had people using it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So he obviously did something right. And we can go into some more, but I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, I think it's hard to do both motions because I find, I've tried to do a little bit of both occasionally. And for software, you need to think in terms of scale. And then for consulting, you actually need to think the opposite, which is like, what is the very specific deep thing I'm going to do for this client, independent of whether it scales at all. And so two very different motions. And of course, you could have a large organization that has some consultants, et cetera. But like, I guess Palantir is the only example of someone who actually was able to pull off consulting first and then building software at scale. But I would argue that only works at like that high level of revenue, right?
Yeah.
They were able to win massive government contracts. Their core competency is probably just winning those massive contracts. Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder, so we often ask on this show, are you building a CRM? I think I know the answer in your case. So I'll ask the second question, which is, what has surprised you on the journey of building a CRM? This is now an industry that's maybe 20, 25 years old. There's like this great Dreamforce, there were these ads in San Francisco, like buy a CRM that's younger than your intern. Like, what would you say is your like primary like learning from having built this?
I think that it's the fine balance between wanting to accommodate users and building what that works that they should be like learning how to use, right? I don't know if that makes sense. Like you have an idea of what you want to do, and then you constantly get feedback, and obviously feedback's important. And then I just didn't expect with that to have the level of feedback. We've always been open to it, and we tell people that, and obviously people want to be able to influence the tools that they're using. But I didn't think that. Now that I'm nailing it, I didn't think that something that was easy for us to, not necessarily for us to build, but easy for us to use would be as easy, like as difficult for some people to then adopt and then to learn to work with. I think realistically, like there's some aspect of that there, but I also didn't expect our old users, like people that have been using our old archaic software, to have such opinions about how things should be done. Like that was surprising. You have somebody that's been running their business a certain way for 20 years and you make it slightly different, and that can be incredibly upsetting. So that was something I think we learned the hard way in a certain way. And it was like the outcome was better. It was easier to do, but it wasn't the same way. And it was like, oh wow, people really, 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 even if it's convoluted or old fashioned or not friendly to anybody else, they find it to be too much of a change. So it was learning how to now with this incrementally do changes rather than doing drastic changes for people. But thank God that all those people are pretty much moved over now, and they're very much more familiar with the platform at this point.
Franz, that kind of reminds me of like what we were talking about, like kind of in the pre-show, which was, with AI, can you build too fast?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like you can build these things really quickly, but there is still the change management component of it, right? There's the human component. So just because I could build a better way, just because I could remove some steps, I could deliver a better outcome, doesn't mean that's going to meet the user where they are and where they want to be.
Absolutely.
And so you have to dial that back a little bit and think about how are they going to accept or reject this change? Or how do I build features in such a way that I can guide them through this? So yes, I'm building this feature today and I know what it's going to look like, but there's a phase 1, a phase 2, and a phase 3 of how this gets implemented maybe over a 12-month period or a 6-month period or something. And so I think there's some of that you just have to, build some trust, usher them in, kind of pull them along to get them there.
So those pesky users, if you didn't have the users, this wouldn't be a problem.
Seriously.
Yeah. So, but actually, I mean, I think a lot of companies are moving to these chat first implementations. And so now chat is something that is a widely used UI paradigm. And so I'm curious, let's talk a little bit about this, like chat within the application. You're building Pathfinder, which I understand is an AI assistant inside Altitude. And then of course, opening up Altitude or your application by MCPs or otherwise to, ChatGPT and Anthropic and Gemini. How do you think of that trade-off? What do you see users actually wanting here?
Yeah. So I think that we were probably one of the first companies, because I haven't seen another, that actually, when we launched, so Altitude, the idea of Altitude was we had a name for it before called Converse. And that was like back in 2023, we had this idea of making it so that an AI assistant could actually interact with, put in, and surface data inside the CRM. And that was an idea that we had that we prototyped with the early version of chat. And it was okay, right? The tool calls weren't as good. So we then, when we built Altitude, we built it around the idea that Pathfinder was the central thing to it, but not necessarily in a way that limits the capability of the individual to dive deep into data on their own. Sometimes I use Pathfinder for stuff. Sometimes I click around myself. But back to the thing I was saying before, the way that we build Pathfinder is that it uses the UI components from the application. So it's not just like a body of text. Like it actually interacts with the user and gives them the ability, since we want to keep them in the loop, gives them the ability to actually surface things and look at them instead of having to read through stuff. The eye can move faster through a UI than it can through reading text, right? Because you don't know what to surface. So then sure, you could surface it using bold or italicized things or something like that. So with that, I think that that will be more and more the direction things go. For us, our long-term aim is to have what we're calling right now Pathfinder Pro, which is realistically what it does is it replaces like our early stage consulting, but then functions within Altitude to be able to not only provide like what they should be doing, reminders, surfacing things that are falling through the cracks, but actually do stuff in it. Like actually execute on things that they should be doing and then surfacing the data to them to be able to make the decision on doing it. So in terms of that, I'm pretty excited that Salesforce now is headless and has an MCP because that makes it so that we don't have to unseat people from Salesforce, but they can still get the agentic intelligence and that layer of intelligence inside the stuff that they're using right now. For us, it's always been about how do we implement all of our best practices into the platform that we're building. And we had to start with a CRM because that's what people were familiar with. But long term, that's not like where we want to stay. We want to build a tool that is on their phone. That's the first thing they look at in the morning, that they interact with, that at least for the areas that we cover, they can get intelligence based off of the stuff that we've already discovered for the last, 30, 40 years.
Yeah. So Franz, I got a question. So you're one of just a handful of AI native CRMs within the wealth management space. But the thing that stands out, immediately is the marketing background, right? So how does Bill Good's marketing history influence Altitude? Like, did you do stuff with any of the content you've created over the years to help train it? Like, what's kind of the marketing area of Altitude?
Yeah, so it's being built in phases. When a person usually comes to us, the first thing we do is we implement like their client marketing strategies. That increases referability, increases retention. They're usually going to get the majority of the money that they get immediately from their current clients. And there are other strategies that we implement with them, hands-on with them, to get them to implement those things. So the first thing we did was certain aspects of the client retention, the client marketing stuff. So the organic growth, the auxiliary things, adding on additional income channels and all that other stuff comes with the later product that we're launching in phases at the end of this year and then early next year, which we're calling Elevate for right now. And those basically bolt together. And Pathfinder works between the two of them, has all of our content in it, and it has multiple channels on which they actually do that marketing on. But I don't think that long-term email, social media, and stuff like that is the way that advisors will market and acquire clients. I think we're going to see like 4 years from now, probably, that everything's completely different. So when we build for what is now and what people want, because they have to check that box off or it's worked for them in the past, we also have to look at how does that lend us towards building the thing that eventually comes later. So on the marketing stuff, like realistically, our content library is probably, usually we want to bring a client on, they work for us in consulting for 2-3 years. Then they stay with us for content because the content is by far the best. It'll never be AI written. It'll always be human written. There's just something about it, the way that we write letters, emails, and stuff like that, that just creates an emotional impact. And I think that's important. So that is an aspect of it, as well as building out the workflows and the sequences that people need to make sure that they're sending these things out, at a regular cadence. And then on the other side of it, on the retention, it's just that, every 90 days, every single person in your book of business should receive a communication from somebody at some point, right? So building those systems, which we call personal contact. So that creates an interval. You're reaching out, you're having meaningful conversations, you're bringing them for meetings, you're doing client events. So while we, on the consulting side, work and focus on client retention, referability, and stuff like that, that's why the first phase of Altitude is that as well.
I just wanted to go back to something you had mentioned about you're happy that the Salesforce is headless. They have an MCP. If I understand correctly, you're looking at integrating Salesforce data into Altitude so people can actually not have to switch off of Salesforce and still use Altitude. Is that right?
Well, it's primarily for Pathfinder Pro. Yeah, but if that data leaks back into a database that they can then swap over to later, then it depends, right? Like, I don't know contractually what Salesforce is going to allow us to do, but it's primarily having that intelligence in here. Yeah.
I mean, the question, I guess this really gets to the core of the question, which is like, how important do you think it is to own the system of record, be active in the system of record space as a product versus be in, we call it system of action, I guess, on this podcast, but you just mentioned intelligence layer, but it's sort of, there's that layer that sits on top of the systems of record in terms of taking action, pulling from that data. And people have a lot of different ideas of how defensible that system of action space is, and also how defensible that system of record space is. But I'm just curious, how do you think of that? Because that's a fairly significant product decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think that being the system of record is incredibly important. And I think depending on how you police the access to that data is incredibly important. And I think that eventually, though, that the way that we store and retain data is going to completely change. I think that it will lend that power to the user, and we'll have universal databases that the user owns that they probably take with them and can do anything with at some point. So, yeah, that's
These
why.
are like spreadsheets they keep on their cloud drives, or these are markdown files they have on their computer, or how do you think this surfaces as a product?
I think that it surfaces as a product by people having independent, personalized agents.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that at some point, the consumer versus business versus data sharing, like I think it'll be indistinct. Like you won't be able to tell the difference. I think that the internet to a certain degree will just simply be agents talking to agents. I think that like the things that I build internally right now for my team that we're building out our knowledge systems and stuff like that I have my own Hermes agent access to help me do things will be indistinguishable from Pathfinder that's working in altitude. So, and I think that it's going to be like a transaction economy.
That's interesting. But then what's the point of the UI at that point? If it's
exactly
agents,
yeah, like we're going to be generating our own UI by the end of the year. Like, right. Why have a reporting system?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually like a really fundamental question, because you can imagine agents building their own custom databases, and you don't have to think about where the database is hosted, or, I mean, obviously from a data security point of view, you have to, but like the product interface is the agent interface and not necessarily any kind of UI or, anything deeper than the UI. And at that point, the question is, who has the best agent? It really comes down to that question. Like, what's the most qualified agent I can talk to get my problem solved? And I think, I mean, this is, maybe I can like riff a little bit off of this. Something people talk about a lot here in the Bay Area is the harness layer. I don't know if this is like a widely used term. I learned recently it's not that widely used, but like basically, yeah, the harness being where the data and the business logic lives above the system of record and above the inference layer where the inference happens. And that's really a really powerful sort of compounding asset that I think Satya Nadella recently talked about, how that might be the compounding asset. And at Microsoft, they don't even care anymore about AI models. Maybe it's convenient because they don't build the best AI models yet, but like they're claiming they want to be model agnostic and just provide tools that work for everyone on every model out there. So
that's probably a good call for them.
It's probably a good call for them. Yeah, for where they are. Let's just be real. Copilot really is bottom of the barrel. I will take my pot shots at Copilot almost every episode. I feel like the majority of our listeners may even use Copilot. So yeah, it's interesting. Go ahead, Vineet.
And I was just going to say, it's interesting you mentioned harness. So I was in New York a couple of weeks back and happened to be there during the same time as the New York Tech Week. And obviously a lot of the folks from SF, the SF gods were there, the founders and investors in every panel, every event. And the word harness came up very, very often. So I can see that it's spreading from the Bay Area.
It is a hot term. There'll be another hot term in the future. But I think actually the concept underneath it is important, which is like, there's like this new, I mean, it's effectively just the application layer. I mean, that's probably the simplest way to put it. It's like, if you think of LLMs as like a compute capability, and then you still have databases, you still need an application, a way for people to plug in. And that was previously called a wrapper, and people were very pejorative about it. I think people are realizing more and more the wrapper is probably the thing. And I guess there's another thing, which is that these wrappers, these applications, you can actually pull up and use the SaaS tools pretty intensely. And I think there's another sort of line of thought, which is these SaaS tools, is far from a SaaS apocalypse. The SaaS tools might be used more than ever before. To what you're saying, Frantz, maybe the agents are just power users of these tools, right? And just you really want to use the tools in a much bigger way.
Yeah, and the reason why I think that, and maybe it's going to differ with our industry, is because we're super early still. Like the level of adoption is super, 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 super low. And I think that there's going to still be a wide breadth of users that still want a UI, that still want to use a thing that doesn't change, that, like that won't change. And we'll probably still use that old interface that hasn't been updated in 5 years because that's what they're comfortable with, which is fine.
I mean, we're also, beyond just the tech change, right? I mean, like we talk in our industry all the time about like the median age of advisors, but like we're also dealing with a generational difference in terms of comfort with tech and the pace of innovation. And so at least in our, this is true everywhere, but at least in terms of our specific industry, as older advisors continue to age, as they continue to retire, everybody else is going to be more comfortable with the pace of change, right? And
That's a good
and
point.
that includes their clientele.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that's something that I talk to my clients a lot about is like, well, what is the average age of your client when they're giving me pushback on like, well, we can't switch. We really like lots of conversations around paper still. And it's like, well,
What is the typical average age? Like what trends do you see, James?
What's that?
What trends do you see? Like, is it is it like a direct correlation where like the older, the less tech savvy, or is it different?
Well, I think it's more the advisor perception. Like where I was going to go with this is there's this like, oh, our clients will never do that. And I'm like, hey, do any of your, older clientele go to the doctor? Because I bet they don't get a paper form anymore. I bet they're handed an iPad to fill out. I bet if it's like my dentist, I get a text and I have to fill this thing out before I show up in their office. Like they have forced many people towards that sort of electronics, and advisors are like, no. And I'm like, I get it. And I think there's always going to be some edge cases and you need to support them. But generally speaking, like they are more savvy and they're only going to get savvier each year. Right. So to keep planning and holding yourself back because like you can think of 3 clients who are never going to do it.
It doesn't make any sense. And actually would say note takers are exhibit A there because I was on the front lines here and people thought their clients would revolt with note takers and that did not happen. And now it's just the default, right? And so it's just, you can really misjudge. Of course, people are conservative. They don't want to burn their client relationships. But Vineet, I'm just conscious you probably deal with a lot of clients who are maybe later stage in their career. Like, how do you deal with this on the front lines?
Yeah, no, this resonates a lot. In fact, what James is talking about reminded me of a story from HSBC 10 years back or 15 years back when we were trying to move folks away from paper payments to the online banking platform. And there was a 75-year-old gentleman who just wouldn't switch until he was forced to, saying we won't accept paper instructions anymore for payments. With the transition platform that we built, obviously, one big layer is getting data from clients. We've built what we think is a very neat data collection flow, which utilizes existing sources of information. There's a kind of client interface there where the clients can kind of more interactively and intuitively, we feel, up through some of that data entry. And we don't look at it as manual data entry, but through other sources, etc. Through some of the transitions, we've seen that advisors have said that, this segment of my clients, that module I'm never using. I will just have to talk to them. They'll come into the office. They'll do DocuSign, but they'll do it in front of me. So I think the whole point is you have to you have to build for both, right? And you have to build with the future in mind, because eventually people will flip and switch, like you said about the note takers. But there is some friction in the beginning, and I think it's interesting. I even used Claude quite a bit to do some QA testing as well. I say, imagine take on personas of this person based in so and so place, this age. Go through my tool and tell me what looks right, what doesn't look right. And obviously, there's some biases, I'm sure. But it's helpful feedback before you take something.
That's a really good one. I like that a lot.
That's a really good idea.
I've done the QA testing. I haven't thought about the persona piece. That's a really good one.
Adding different personas and having that qualitative lens. I think that's really good. Yeah. How do people react to, obviously, the data they're entering into the system is being uploaded to AI labs, AI systems. Do you still hear concerns about that? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think that was there if you think about it, even with the early kind of advent of the note takers, right? That's one of the reasons why some people just wouldn't adopt it. So that question keeps coming up. But I think I feel like the question from advisors and in turn their clients is starting to change from is it safe to how do you make sure it's secure? and like just give me enough confidence so that I know that, my data is never going to be in the wrong place, accessed by the wrong person. So it's kind of flipping towards that. So obviously you have to kind of make sure that you're setting in the right controls and practices to give them comfort. And also as a firm, when you're dealing with customer data and something like transitions, you're dealing with sensitive data, right? You obviously kind of double down on that. But I think the way people are questioning security safety is changing. But yeah, some people are more concerned than others still.
How is it changing?
Yeah. No, like I said, I think there's broader comfort because I think more and more people are using AI in their daily lives. So there's a level of comfort that comes from that. And then you kind of explain to them how it's managed securely. There's encryption. It's not being handed over to anyone to train. There's strong data. All those kind of the things that you actually do in practice, explain that in layman terms.
Yeah.
And then again, some people will say, you know what, I'll handle this. I don't want my client to directly work with this. Some advisors take that call.
Yeah. People make a call. I think things will change. There will be a breach. OpenAI or Anthropic will be breached. And I think things will change pretty dramatically then. At least that's sort of one of the bets we're making at Knapsack. That people will go local. That people will want
or go rogue or something. You think breach or someone going rogue? That's also possible, right?
I mean, there could be a breach. I mean, a lot of the breaches these days are social engineering hacks, right? So I get approached occasionally by like scammers on Telegram, and like it's interesting, increasingly sophisticated. Recently, I was approached by a scammer who wanted to like have me on a podcast, and of course, I'm a sucker for being on podcasts, so like they have my number. And I learned this is like a really sophisticated scam where they like have you download a Riverside like type application, and that's how they infect your computer, right? But this person seemed completely legit when they first reached out to me, and they even did a video call with me with their video off, which is a telltale sign. But yeah, it's interesting how sophisticated these things are getting.
It's not what you guys are doing, is it?
Yeah, we're sucking your data in right now. This is a whole business model.
Thanks for downloading our app, Frantz.
Maybe, Frantz, these are like Mark and James's AI ghosts who are hosting this podcast.
Delete that holiday photos library. You don't want to see that.
I've been off doing client work for the past 3 hours. Like I never even joined this. I mean, the thing we're laughing about that, but that is, I mean, if you think about the video quality today, right? And the ability to imitate somebody, whether it's like a true deep fake where somebody's trying to kind of mislead you, or whether it's you're just trying to build something that's really high quality, like we're there. Like it's very challenging to tell the difference. And I think even like, and this is a completely different topic, but I don't know how, if I were a photographer right now, I feel like I'd be angry, right? Or any sort of like digital artist, because like, while it's really cool and you'll certainly figure out how to adapt and like the best will, at the same time, it's like things that they've been doing, like somebody can do in Midjourney or Nano Banana, whatever, like they can do in seconds. And now people who have done these really cool effects with real photography, people are going to be like, oh, that's AI. It's like, no, I really did that. Like,
they don't get credit.
Like to craft
real.
this image took 12 hours and slow this and that. And like all this artistry.
We've actually had complaints that we're using AI for our content because we use correct punctuation. And actual real M dash is when it's required.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's one of those things.
Dashes have gotten a bad name, I think, for sure.
They have. I've actually started adopting M dashes now. Like I actually do legit
full circle
use them when I never have before. And like I have one standing prompt in my overall like Claude workspace, which I pulled out recently, which was like never use M dashes. Like that was the only, workspace wide prompt that I had in there.
Wait,
Everything else I do at a lower level.
Why are you doing that?
Why was I doing the no M dashes?
Why are you doing M dashes now though?
Because I've just kind of gotten used to them. They make sense as like a logical pause. Like I use a lot of like 3 dots or spacing historically. And like the M dashes do make sense sometimes. And it's probably also because like I am using AI to help me generate a lot of content. Right. And like for the first time now, like even 2 weeks ago, this wasn't true. It is now. Like as of maybe a week ago, some of my content could be completely AI generated, but it's generally going to be, it's not going to be a thought leadership piece. It's going to be something like far more generic. Like all the thought leadership still comes out of me. But so if there's some M dashes in there, yeah, it probably was AI generated. Like I'm not going to apologize for it. Like I think there's sometimes it's like I'd rather get something out there than nothing, and I'm okay with it. Like as long as it's not complete slop. And
Yeah.
content for content's sake.
I started putting typos in some of my things because that's like one way people know it's not
Make it
slop.
seem human.
But then I realized you could easily do a system prompt telling your AI.
But I think this is sort of the thing. Like this is where I'm going is like, don't get me wrong. There's always going to be, and like, Franz, I think it's cool that you said like, the content's always going to be human written. Like I like that. And if I were hiring a marketing firm, like I like that. So I think it's a good message. I think it's a good strategy. I think you're right. It does give something different. But the reality is like, if you're trying to grow a business, you're trying to scale, there are things that allow you to be more efficient, that get more reach, that, play the game of the algorithms and stuff like that. So like, do I have time to write 15 pieces of content every week to do this and also do these other things that grow my business? Like I don't. And if I'm at the place where I could pay somebody like you guys to write really high quality content, that's fantastic. But either way, I didn't write it.
Yeah, no, it's true. And that is one of those things, our advisors get phone calls or they have people bring in letters of like, at least once every couple months, we have somebody that says, "Oh, I just had a new client that just came in and, they're bringing over, $1 million or $2 million or whatever. And they brought in a stack of my letters and they think that I'm a brilliant writer. They think that I wrote all this stuff. It's kind of amazing, which yes, I can understand that. We also have people that rewrite certain aspects of it, but then to go, if it was all AI written, man, I don't know. That's like a whole other level of moral quandary that we need to get over at some point, I think. But if everything's AI written, who's going to read anything really?
Well, I mean, like, but it's just. You're sorry. Go ahead, Vineet.
No, I was just going to say the handwritten, the letters piece. It's a question for the group, right? So do you think we'll go back to a time where handwritten stuff, hand-drawn stuff becomes something that people look forward to?
Yeah, I think the more digital things are, the more people want the authentic experiences, right? Which is, I think, why people frankly, I think why people like podcasts, because like it's 100% authentic. I think it's why people prefer in-person events. It's why people like handwritten stuff or gifts. I think gifts are really cool as like a thank you gift, as like a level of authenticity, because it just lands so different from anything AI generated. So yeah, I definitely think that's going to happen. Every action has a reaction. And actually, just looking at the time, we should probably wrap with some rapid fire if you guys are open to it. So we have some standard ones, but I actually want
rapid, to be honest.
What's that?
So they're never really that rapid fire.
Never really that rapid. It's like a medium fire.
Like 3 or 4 questions over 5 minutes. Like,
But one question for both of you guys is, what is the biggest misconception advisors have about AI in their practice?
Faster. Answer faster. It's rapid fire.
I think that the industry right now can provide them with a tool that does all the things they want.
That's a misconception. I see.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think expectation for things to be plug and play, I think that doesn't work beyond a certain point. But the expectation
why is it not
always
plug and
there.
play? Because of the data issue, they have to sort of onboard their data, or is there other stuff going on?
No, I think, it depends on the use case, right? I think something like a meeting assistant obviously can be plug and play, right? It just works. But if you look at some of the harder kind of multi-step flows with edge cases, etc., it's hard for AI to get it right end to end. And
right.
There's an opportunity for that human to kind of play a big role, right?
Yeah, I was going to add that I think people see the future coming and they have ideas of what they'd like to do. And we're going to get there, but I think we're still a little early. And so to go out to a vendor and then have this idea in mind where, it's supposed to accomplish something, like it will at some point. But I think in a lot of cases, we're not really there yet.
I think like my twist or kind of add to the misconception here is that like, one, yes, I fully agree that they think it can do everything. But the other part is like, it can do a lot. The problem is, just like anything, it requires a decent amount of effort and, in AI terms, context, right? In order to actually perform that job well, right? Single step, multi-step. Like it needs strong context. And I think that's where a lot of these things fail that advertise themselves as AI plug and play. And some do a better job of like, well, we'll read your past 30 emails and we'll try and understand how you talk. And like, there's some things that are like trying to build the context on your behalf, but really like you have to put in some effort and the application has to have a means to understand you, your business, your clientele, your processes, what your goals are. And the more it can do that effectively, I think the better the solution is going to be, regardless of how narrow or broad it is.
Yeah. I mean, for me, for what it's worth, I think it's that people think of AI as just a more powerful Google search, whereas it just has so much more capability. And they just have this one very specific modality in their mind, which is like call and response, which
Yeah.
can do so much more. And the most recent thing I've been digging into is this idea of closed loops, verifiable loops, and goal setting, and just letting it run for hours on end against a goal. As long as you can keep your tokens under control, it's
I was going to say, see, you're
I was
the
just
token
gonna say,
maxing
yeah.
person. Like that's it. We found it. It's Mark,
Spend $1
everyone.
million a day in
But-
tokens. This is your job. Do whatever you need to do to spend $1 million a day in tokens.
But this is where I think, Mark, and I think you were making the point earlier, right? This is where I think the open source LLMs could play a big role. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's our bet at Knapsack is that, people will be able to run these things nonstop for the cost of electricity over time. And frankly, the open source LLMs, even on the cloud, whether it's Grok or Together AI or whatever, what have you, even OpenRouter, they're quite affordable, right? You can actually be very smart about managing your token spend if you really know what you're doing. So yeah, I think there's a lot of scope there, a lot of room there.
Just today, my wife asked me if we should start using like local models. Like we both have built some AI agents and stuff. And so she read an article about somebody else and sent it to me and was like, do we need a Mac studio? Should we like be doing this? And I'm like, to do what I want to do, I think we need like 4 Mac studios.
I don't know, man. I mean, it depends
like,
what you're trying to do, but like the use cases, you don't need a PhD to do everything. And like the day-to-day use cases, it's getting better and better.
Yeah. Well, and especially if you're running agents that like, you're not talking about like query response. You're running agents that are doing jobs. As long as the model can run on there, it doesn't really matter if it can run really fast.
Oh, that's right. So you're not watching it, right? The whole idea of a fast
so if
model
it takes
presumes
3 hours to do something, that's kind of not a big deal. If the alternative was going to be 90 minutes, if I were to run it, using, Claude Opus or something like that, one of those models, or using a 30 billion parameter model on 4 Mac studios or something. What's our next question? I just lost my spot here. Rapid fire. Here we go. Well, you did the biggest misconception, which is such a good one.
It is a good one. You want to do underhyped, overhyped?
I feel like we've gotten the same answers. I think we need to retire.
What is the most popular one there? I'm curious.
So I mean, what for most underhyped, overhyped? Yeah, I mean, pretty much everybody, like 8 out of 10 say AI note takers are overhyped. That's pretty much like the answer that we get. So I kind of want to retire that. But if you guys have an alternative, you're welcome.
Underhyped is generally more interesting. We should probably just do underhyped, right? Like, because underhyped, we got Claude Code about 6 months ago, right? I think underhyped is where people talk about the emerging stuff. So yeah, most underhyped AI technology at this point.
And it doesn't have to be at all.
No, I think generally, like any industry, right, is multi-step workflows. Where it's not plug and play. I think that is just not given enough. Because if it's not plug and play, most people think, okay, it's not going to work for me. I might as well do it myself. But there's something about how AI can take away stuff that you don't want to do, and then you just focus on the stuff that you need to do. I think that is still not very mature in my opinion, and that I'm sure is valid across industries, not just wealth.
Frantz, what about you?
I think for advisors, like, does anybody actually use skills?
Like Claude skills or
that's a good point.
Interesting.
What the heck? Those are the most life-changing thing, period, than building your own skills.
Yes.
Right.
Like, I see people use chat and they ask questions. Again, that's that input-output thing. But skills changed the way we do everything as a business.
Totally agree with this. Totally agree with this.
Yeah, I did. Like we did a conference recently last month in Nashville. I did a whole thing on that, and not only that, but getting your LLM to understand you by interviewing you, and then using that data that you get out of it to then put into it so that it can sort of you can give it its own personality based off of how you work and what it knows about you and stuff like that. And then combine that with skills. And then you have like, that's like the gateway drug to really going, well, what else can I do? Right.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, Frantz. So you just described like our onboarding process for Groundskeeper. So
Really?
the first thing it does is it interviews you
Okay.
on these 5 topics. You're welcome to just fill it in on your own, but it interviews you on 5 topics.
Mm-hmm.
And then what it does is it creates the memory store, right? Our markdowns, right? It creates those. And then those are used as context to understand like you and your firm and your business. And then it does something similar when you kick off a project, where it asks you some questions about the project, ingests some docs, and then it builds the memory store for that. And then we have a series of skills that help it manage transcripts, look at a project document, how it runs through project management. And that's all how that thing operates, right?
Does it do this in voice with a Scottish accent?
I feel like we might have a Simpsons related lawsuit if I do that.
I mean, you can just do a co-marketing deal, like
yeah. And to be clear, Willie is a female avatar. So
interesting. Well, I mean, maybe Willie transitioned, right? So like, I think that's even better. A more modern version of Simpsons.
I mean, that's possible as long as the Simpsons don't have a problem with it. I love my movies and TV show references, but I don't care to get sued by any of them. So.
Well, on that note, thank you very much to both of you guys for coming on and spending time. Really excited to learn about what you guys are building and excited to see what you guys build next.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Frantz. Thanks, Vineet.
Enjoy it.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys. All right. Bye-bye.